Cybercriminals are using social engineering, loaded with urgency and fear, to successfully prey on victims, your employees, or your customers. Protect your Office 365 email from today's most sophisticated attacks with Barracuda Email Threat Scanner. It's a free tool to help protect your business from these hard-to-detect attacks. The Barracuda Email Threat Scanner uses artificial intelligence to hunt and eliminate Office 365 email threats. Find the cybersecurity threats hiding in your Office 365 email right now. Get your free email threat scan at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Cyber risk and compliance automation is finally here. Legacy GRC systems cannot support the powerful, real-time automation and oversight that organizations require to take risks that matter to succeed. CyberSync continuous control automation ingests data from the IT GRC stack to update controls against regulatory requirements and risks in real time, delivering insights and visibility. See how members of the Fortune 500 are saving millions annually by visiting securityweekly.com/CyberSync.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Adrian Sanabria. Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through 7th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. We're excited to announce our first round of speakers: Leslie Carhart, David Kennedy, Alyssa Miller, O'Shea Bowens, Marina Ciavata, Patrick Coble, Chris Eng, Eric Escobar, Nick Leghorn, Michael Schlatt, Kevin Johnson, and Justin Kohler. Visit securityweekly.com/unlock to register and check out our rockstar lineup. Join us August 26th at 11 a.m. Eastern to learn how to implement cloud security that actually works. Visit securityweekly.com/webcast to register now. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts or technical trainings, they are available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. All right, on to the leadership and communications articles for the week. So, Jason, I started with this first one. I love the title, Real IT Leadership, Selling the Transformative Dream. And then I read the article and I was like, yeah, there wasn't much guidance here on, like, what should I do to sell that
How
dream?
to sell. There was no guidance on how to sell. You know, in concept, like you said, the title is great because as leaders in an organization, I mean, that part of the job is to be a salesman, but I don't mean it in a creepy way, like a car salesman way. I mean in an influential way, right? It's to be able to get folks within the business to align with your mission and your strategy. So there is a level of selling the mission, selling the vision, and getting people on board and building the trust. Because, I say it all the time, just trust is that foundation of relationships and influence and your ability to change hearts and minds toward the direction that you need to be taking your team and your business to. So there is an aspect of selling. And I know folks who've grown up in the engineering world, and they're adamant, I'll never be a salesperson, I'll never be a salesman. But once you get into leadership, it's about having meaningful conversations. And sometimes it is, quote unquote, selling the dream, selling the vision.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to take directives from the top and kind of weave them through the organization and build consensus.
Yeah.
And that's what a leader does, right? Whether you're a CIO
Absolutely.
or a CISO or whatever. I mean, that's part of the business. And I think, our interview with Jim Ralph last week around some of the areas he discussed. I mean, true business leadership, right? Don't be the SME, build consensus. And I thought this article was going to go down the same path. It didn't quite go there for me, but I think it is an important topic is as executives, even in a very technical field, whether it's IT or security, we do have to build consensus and be leaders. And that means a little bit of sales, a lot of business acumen. I mean, it all plays into kind of the skill sets these executives need.
Yeah, and if you look at the article, there's actually a paragraph in there that links to a separate article called The 7 Skills of Successful Digital Leaders. That one kind of gets into a little bit, it gets a little bit deeper, being capable of navigating uncertainty and having conversations around that, being adept at building relationships. So that article actually gets a little bit deeper. So check out that link off of the original. But at the end of the day, a lot of what we discuss on this show about building the relationships, building the trust, having open communication with business units, learning the business, right? Learning their business so you can actually articulate, what you're trying to achieve through their terminology and in the business's terminology is going to get you a long way.
Yeah, that ties into this. Oh, go ahead, Adrian.
I also clicked into that second article and totally agree with that, especially like the empathy piece. I've often, like when I train salespeople, like one of the core principles there is, let people talk a bit, ask them about what they're frustrated with, what they're having trouble with, and just listen. They first and foremost, they need therapy. They need somebody to just sit and listen to their problems. And, I've always found like one of the best ways to get your foot in the door and to get somebody to listen to you and maybe on board as, somebody that can help you is, come fix their printer, from an IT perspective, maybe we can prioritize some of their issues, and get a little, kind of like a loss leader from a traditional standpoint, scratch their back first.
Yep. No, absolutely. Right. And it's amazing. You're dead on, Adrian, about the listening skills, and many times people like to walk in the door and be the smartest person in the room. But ultimately, if you want to build that trust, you want to build that relationship, it's sitting back and listening. It's how you're going to learn. It's how you're going to learn what they're all about as a leader. It's how you're going to learn how to communicate with them and what their motivations are. It's how you're going to learn about their portion of the business so you can align to that. And think of it this way. As a leader, there's lots of stages of leadership. And as you get up toward the top levels, you're looking at it more from that servant leadership perspective, right? You're there to serve. And that's ultimately what it is. And that's kind of how I've always attacked my leadership style is, listen, I'm a service provider. I'm here to serve these business units and provide them an outcome. And the only way to do that is to learn and listen.
Yeah, I take the same tact, but I describe it a little differently. I often say security should be like a consulting group within the organization. A place people are comfortable coming to with questions.
100% agreed.
Talking about relationships, the second article, I love the second article, 7 tips to improve the CISO-CFO relationship, because think about it, right? If we just want to be considered a cost center, fine, but you're not going to get very far in building momentum and being a true leader, right? And so you have to understand the relationship with the CFO. And I love this because I've spent so much time over the past few years building business plans, understanding profit loss statements. This is a learned skill. This is not something that's natural to most of us in the technology space. And this article, I think, really helps think about, like, what are the things you have to do as a CISO to understand what the CFO is talking about. How do I do a better job of budgeting? How do I measure outcomes when it comes to the financials? This was a great article. I love this because I do this all the time because the way we run the business here at Cyber Risk.
This is probably one of the most important articles we've had on this show in a while for aspiring CISOs, aspiring technology leaders who have a seat at the table, right? Because at the end of the day, that CFO and that finance team is the engine that runs the business. And they have the ear of the CEO. They have the ear of the board of directors. And ultimately, having that relationship and learning the operations of the finance team is only going to benefit you in the long run, because now you can align your business unit, the security team, to what the expectations of the CFO are. And ultimately, they can be a mentor to you as a business leader, right? To really help and guide you through how to present to the CEO, how to present to the board of directors, and what's important to bring to the table. Because in many instances, we hear stories around, CISOs getting up in front of the board of directors and really taking their presentation way too technical and way too in the weeds, and it doesn't come across as value add to them, right? So having that person you can bounce ideas off of, to really make sure that as you're communicating and presenting to the other C-level executives or the board, you're doing it in a manner that's going to be impactful. And the CFO has their ear to the ground because they're constantly doing it from a financial perspective.
Yeah, let me give everybody some tips what happens when you run a business or you run a business unit. You want things. How do you justify things, right? What's it going to cost? How much revenue is it going to drive? You have to understand these dynamics because, as Paul and I have continued to grow the Security Weekly side of the business and the business intelligence unit, which I now run, every request has revenue tied to it. It has top line revenue tied to it, right? So you have to understand that balance of what an investment cost looks like and what is the expectation on the revenue side on the other side. Security is the exact same way. I want a new widget to improve this, that, or the other thing. That cost, where is that going to either reduce cost somewhere else or how is that going to enable me to drive more revenue? That's what the CFO wants to know. And if you don't understand those dynamics, you're never going to be able to position these projects in a positive way.
That's it. And to be honest with you, conversations with CFOs have led me to understand there's different types of revenue too. There's direct and indirect revenue. You know what I mean? And you're starting to look at things like pull through. You can enable certain opportunities by putting in certain technologies, but then there's the unintended consequences of additional revenue, that indirect revenue that comes from that and pull through, right? So now you're really strategizing from a financial perspective all the different types of revenue sources that could be coming in that your department is helping enable.
Yeah, then you got renewing revenue, recurring renewal revenue versus brand new, revenue. Those are two different types of revenue buckets.
Right. And let me tell you, you want to motivate a CFO, you start talking to them about ARR, annual reoccurring revenue. That's going to make a twinkle in their eye.
I was going to say, it's important for the people under the CISO as well. I can't tell you how many times, I've heard CISOs, talk about, training budget, at the beginning of the year, very positively, like everybody's going to get to go to training, blah, blah, blah. And it's the first thing that gets cut, and man, that's a killer for morale because a lot of people that's one of the biggest highlights in their whole year, like they'll change jobs just to go to a place that'll actually send them off to training because, they want to further their career. They want to learn new skills. They want to get certifications and stuff like that. And if you're not managing that budget right, if you're not protecting that training budget, you're going to have retention problems.
Yeah.
Like Jim said I was going to say, Jim said it last week, right? There's no retention. Unlimited budget for training. Right?
Right, yeah.
You put together your plan employee, we'll fund it.
Yep. Yeah.
And he didn't like the word retention. I'm trying to remember what he said.
Development.
Yeah, development. Yeah. You don't retain employees. And it does sound kind of terrible. Like every time I say that now, I'm going to correct myself.
Yeah. And honestly, if you have a really good relationship with the CFO, you can figure out very innovative ways to make sure you're aligning training to the employees, right? I mean, there's been instances in tight years, you have conversations with the CFO and they have visibility into so many other aspects of the business that they can really get innovative with you and leverage partnership trainings and, economies of scale with other trainings and other departments that are happening, so it really allows, having that good relationship allows you to think outside the box when it comes to funding things.
Yes. This next article, three strategies for securing the digital supply chain. I was actually a little surprised by the recommendations in this one. It almost looked like it was a sponsored post.
Yeah.
But it's not because it's very heavy on patch management and automation. And I would have thought for sure this was sponsored, but that's where it led you down a patching process.
Yeah, and I agreed. I mean, I'm very surprised that it's not sponsored, and I'm wondering if indirectly it is in some way, shape, or form.
I'm not sure the people that were using that accounting package, that Ukrainian accounting package, would agree with the just automatically run the updates.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's how you got it.
Right. If you applied the patches, you got, and so they're talking about automated tools to fix simple vulnerabilities and do a cost benefit analysis for vulnerability patching, and I just would have thought that having read all this, that there would have been like a sponsor, like somebody just would have popped out of the woodwork is sponsoring this, because it just seems so technology focused.
Yeah. Which is odd for, HBR, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is, right? And so when I think about the steps I need to do around digital supply chain and securing it, I need a proper inventory. I need to do a risk assessment. I need to look at the various controls that are in place and how do I want to apply those. This went straight to vulnerability management and patching, which is like 2 or 3 layers below the 3 things I just talked about.
Yeah. I mean, when I first read the headline, I was thinking vendor risk management, supply chain auditing, you know what I mean? More of the GRC side of the aisle, making sure you're vetting your partners in your supply chain and really, testing them to whatever compliance or regulatory needs you need as a business, and really managing your supply chain at the highest levels. But this was very, very laser focused. And it's one piece of a very massive puzzle.
It is. I mean, vuln management and patching is just one piece of a much bigger set of controls that need to be done. So anyways,
right.
Next. 5 simple tips to write an email that will actually be read. Again, we send a lot of emails. I thought this was interesting in thinking about how you structure your emails. How do you get more engagement from your emails? I think a lot of people are emailed out, to be honest. I mean, the first thing I do every morning is I clear out all the junk. And so if it says bulk in it, it's almost immediately gone. Yeah. But, think about your subject line, the format. What do you want to get across in that first sentence that attracts the attention of the reader to get engagement? And so this kind of walks through those different steps.
Yeah, I would take the word email out of this and say any type of digital communication, right? Because at the end of the day, some of us are using Teams, some of us are using Slack, right? A lot of organizations are trying to rip themselves out of email because it's become so much of a collection of noise, to the point where, you're federating with partners and companies and clients through the more modern unified communications type systems. And I would say this holds to any type of digital communication. Geez, even if I'm leaving someone a voicemail, I'm going to make sure my opening statement, the subject line, is powerful, because they want to pay attention to it, because they're probably going to listen to about 10 seconds of it, right? So at the end of the day, I would use these for any type of communication. But you do. I mean, number one is you have to get someone's attention, because we're running 1,000 miles an hour, and we're going to pay attention to what we're prioritizing first, right? So you got to grab that attention right away.
Yeah.
So, I think one of the benefits here is there's a ton of marketing tools out there where you can plug in a whole email or just a subject line or something like that, and it's intended for cold emails to improve click rate, but it works in general. Usually, what you're going to use for that, applies to, email communications inside the company as well. The same kind of like, keep it short and sweet. People get, it's something that you have to keep in mind every time you send an email. The person I'm sending an email, this is just one of 300 they're going to look at today. So immediately, if you've got 8 paragraphs in there, they'll open it and just say, nope.
Right. Yep. If it's that important, they'll reach out.
and it'll most people have a bucket for when I've got tons of extra time, I'll get to this.
Which in many instances is almost never. Almost never. So they'll never get to it.
Might as well be deleted, right?
Yeah, exactly it. Yeah, and I like the last one. Your communication should have a call to action. There's nothing worse than having a communication
call to action.
Yeah.
Say again?
One call to action.
Yeah, right. But have a call to action, right? Saying, what do you need? What are you expecting out of this? What are the expectations of this communication that I'm sending you?
And that should be number 3. That should be your first sentence, usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I often focus on really heavily is that the TLDR, the first sentence should always be the TLDR. Like, if they only read that one thing, that should tell you what they're asking for. And those are some of the most frustrating emails I've ever read, are the ones where literally it's flipped and you have to trudge through all this stuff, and then the call to action is at the very bottom, after 4 or 5 paragraphs. Right. And it's if you've ever looked at a heat map of how somebody reads a web page or an email, it's F-shaped. They'll read the entire first line, maybe if you're lucky, the entire first 2 lines, and then they read the next couple lines, maybe the first 4 or 5 words, then 1 or 2 words, then 1 word, and then it just falls off. So it's this curve where if you don't get your point across, or if you don't grab them in those first 2 lines, forget it.
Yep.
And the reason we don't go back and ever check that email bucket is because we are now in the endless digital workday. Now, this is an HBR
nice
article
transition.
I actually like.
That was great.
Very nice.
I am a professional. But I like this one because it analyzes what happens when we are remote work. And what I thought was really interesting here is there's some certain trends that stuck, like 9 to 5 is still the main window, but it's only 60% of the window. And we see now activity outside of both of those windows. And the reason I think this is so important is, look, who knows when all of us are ever going to get back into a regular office situation. We're going to be in this. And I think the research they did here and the tips in here are going to help you build a better collaboration with your teams in a remote workforce, because work is being done outside of 9 to 5. You just have to understand how it's being done in and outside of those traditional windows. And I think you get better team engagement.
Yeah, totally. And I think you get better results, right? Because one of the things that stood out for me was more from the process efficiency side of the aisle, right? Where it said 41% of business processes were positively correlated with team overlap, meaning the teams are working at the same time together. How many instances, especially in a leadership position, do I see, one department who's part of a process, but that process involves like 4 or 5 different departments, and because there's a roadblock because one department's not available at that time, the entire process slows down and shuts down. So having that level of visibility to say, at certain times of the day, everybody's working together, and it makes that process flow more efficient. And for me, being a service provider, that's ultimately frictionless to our customers. And that's ultimately what we're trying to achieve, right? Is getting the best service out to the customer. We don't want to say, hey, sorry, we're not going to be able to get this to you tomorrow because the 2 teams weren't online at the same time working together. Right. That's the last thing we want to say. So figuring out that balance of when you have everyone together working so processes flow efficiently, that was impactful for me.
Yeah, and what's interesting is it's that midday, because people take breaks and lunch at different times, and especially when you're in different time zones. That lunch hour gets extended from a time slot to across a couple hour time slot based on different time zones.
Right. And I mean, if you're doing the right amount of analysis, you can have processes that you say, listen, the best time to process whatever this action is going to be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Right? That's when we want to do this because we know we're going to be the most efficient at it.
And there's so many factors here. Somebody who spent a year and a half as the only U.S. employee of a South African-based company, all my coworkers were 7 hours ahead, or 8 hours, depending on the time of year. And but I mean, bunch of factors in here. Like some people are just naturally more productive at different times of the day. So it's kind of dumb to lock them into a schedule where they're not more productive. And then, I always urge people to go check out Jason Fried's, it's about a 16-minute TED Talk called Why Work Doesn't Happen at Work. A lot of times the reason that you're seeing work happen in the evenings is because that's when they can do work. There's meetings during the day. So certain work just can't get done during those meetings. So that's the time available, to do creative work, to get through email, and Jason covers all that in that talk. He talks about asking people when they get work done. A lot of people say, really early in the morning or really late at night, or it'll be a place like on the train, on the commute, at the coffee shop or something like that. It's usually a time or a place. And they never answer at work during work hours. Like, you almost never hear that answer. That's not when work, and work being the actual, productivity.
Right. Because, like in my case, I'm back to back 9, 10 meetings in a row. I'm not getting work done. I'm just on meetings, right? Yeah. So guess when I get my stuff done? Early in the morning, later in the afternoon. This is just proving that the way we work and when stuff gets done are going to be at different times.
Yeah, flexibility is important.
Yeah.
And focus on outcomes, not when people are working.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
Yeah, agreed. These last 2 articles are around careers. The first one is around cybersecurity professionals need training and a pay raise, which I thought was an interesting end to the research. I mean, this is the research that ISSA and others have done, year over year. And we talked about this last week with Jim around training, right? And it's not about employee retention, it's about employee development. And that means training. That means you build a program, and you if you're responsible as a cybersecurity and you can get it funded, great. Because the research says 91% of those we surveyed agree the cybersecurity professionals need to keep up with their training, or it puts their organization at risk. That's a pretty huge stat. 91% is a big number.
Oh yeah, big time. Especially couple it with 57% who they don't think they're getting enough training, right? So I mean, at the end of the day, we need to be focused on that. And I know in many instances, I know of many engineers and many technical folks who would take a flat compensation and not get a raise if they got more training in their careers. I've had many conversations with folks saying, you know what, I'm ready to leave where I'm at. They're not training me enough. The salary's not where I want it to be, and the 2 of those together are detrimental, right? So in the conversations is if one or the other were there, I don't think I'd be thinking this hard, but when they're coupled together, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Couple that with if you are going to leave, then where do you go? Because I'm not surprised by this top career list. I mean, application development security, we've been talking application security for a long time. We've seen tremendous uptick in AppSec, the development side, the whole concept of shift left and DevSecOps.
Yep.
Hot space, right? So, this is going to continue to pick up momentum. Cloud security doesn't surprise me. We see a ton of migration to the cloud. What I thought was interesting, though, and we talk a lot about risk management on this show, but a lot of people don't think about risk management from a security perspective. But this article says, look, number 3 is risk management. Risk managers are in demand, and a lot of us don't think sometimes that that's traditional security.
I don't know. What's my mantra, Matt? What's my mantra? Learn it or you'll report to it. Guaranteed.
Yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think that's one of the number one things that people from the outside don't understand about cybersecurity is it's so broad. Like show people that mind map of CISO's responsibilities. It's just like I mean, I don't know any other. I mean, obviously the CFO covers anywhere where there's money. And that's pretty broad, but pretty shallow, where security folks are expected to go, I think, a bit deeper, across such a broad range of stuff. Yeah, it really is a lot, but yeah, in some people's mind, when you say cybersecurity, they think about very specific technical hackery type stuff. And it's there. That's part of it. Sure. It's a very visible part of it, but there's a lot more.
Yeah, and ultimately it snaps into an overall business risk management program, right? So risk management is key. And those are the conversations that the CFO, the CEO, and the board of directors are going to be having with you.
And you know what frustrates me here is where are the internships? Where are the junior folks? Like I've been working with some mentees, and I can't find them a job anywhere. I can try and call in favors. Nothing. Like I keep hearing about there being a skills gap, but it seems to be at like the top. Like there's nothing at the bottom. There's nobody training people up.
No
You know what? Is that an end product of us being a little bit too rigid in the way we're hiring, though? And we talked about it on the show before. You know, we have all these expectations of cybersecurity professionals when we're hiring them. You need to have a master's degree and 10 years, you know, in the business to even get, you know, a level 2 engineering job, right? Come on.
It's not just that.
You got to be better at the way we're hiring.
It's not just that. It's like I literally know, like somebody would have a junior position, you'd ask them about it, and they'd be like, "Yeah, we took that off the table," you know, because we only have this much money, and you know, we'd rather get one senior person rather than like a lower level person and a junior person.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's
they're hiring for unicorns.
Right? Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's I think it's short-sighted is one of security's biggest problems. Things move so fast. You know, I mean, if cybersecurity trends were children, we'd be horrified at how quickly they get murdered and killed off.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about threat intelligence in the analyst positions, et cetera, that's where you would expect to see those entry-level jobs, bring them in as SOC 1 analysts, train them up, move them up through their career. But if they're hiring the unicorns and the senior level people, how are we going to get new blood and new talent into this industry?
It's just easy button. Everybody wants the easy button. You know what? Build an apprenticeship program. Start grooming cybersecurity professionals. Right? I mean, come on. We gotta do this kind of stuff.
Reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. I'm trying to remember exactly where it came from, but everybody's got the money to do it. Nobody's got the money to do it right, but everybody's got the money to do it over.
Kind of like CISO hiring. Oh, did I say that a lot? You know what I mean. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. Great show as always. Thank you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.